There were two companies discussed here today, the Liscon group of companies and the George Alex group of companies. The Commission has documentary evidence from the union that between mid-2012 and early 2014, the union recovered over $900,000 of workers' entitlements from the George Alex companies. In relation to Liscon, despite the very soft examination of counsel assisting today, the facts are that Liscon paid over $600,000 in back pay in relation to superannuation after they were sued by Cbus. Now, the union makes no apology for holding companies accountable for workers' entitlements, and we make no apology for being successful in doing so. That's our job, and in both these cases the union has done exactly what our members would expect.
What about the allegations raised by Brian Fitzpatrick today? Was he forced out of the union because he raised concerns about the links with George Alex and his group of companies?
Absolutely not. Let's look at the facts here. Mr Fitzpatrick gave evidence today about the circumstances of his leaving the union. The reality is Mr Fitzpatrick left the union voluntarily and without coercion. A number of things he has said here today are not true, but in relation to the alleged death threat, let me say this. First of all, the union, upon the matter being reported, immediately called the police and then called them again to make sure they attended on the 000 call that we heard today. The police attended. It was Mr Fitzpatrick that sent the New South Wales Police away after they arrived. Hardly the actions of a person who is concerned for his life. Secondly, the union president then embarked upon a documented internal investigation of Mr Fitzpatrick's allegation and was unable to prove that one word could be accepted above the other. Then, unsatisfied with that, we, on behalf of at Mr Fitzpatrick's insistence, had a second investigation of a retired eminent state secretary, a person accepted by all, including Mr Fitzpatrick, as being impartial. Again, he was unable to make a finding that either Fitzpatrick or Greenfield should be believed over the other. Thirdly, we then have a third investigation by external legal counsel, who again find firstly that there was no undue influence in respect of the Alex companies. Secondly, there is no evidence whatsoever that the union used its officers to get Alex companies to work at Barangaroo. And thirdly, over the period of time that Fitzpatrick says the union was not pursuing claims, we recovered over $900,000 of workers' entitlements. If that is getting a soft run from the union, I'd like to see a hard run.
But did you delay in getting that $900,000 back? Absolutely not.
The documentary evidence which the Commission has and has chosen not to lead today shows clearly that from mid-2012 proceeding through 2013 up until early this year, there were significant recoveries of underpayments from the George Alex Group.
But
that is contemporary and documented evidence.
But weren't the concerns raised well before that?
Well, go back to the time frame. The time frame is this. The evidence today, in my recollection, was given about 2013. From 2012, well before Mr Fitzpatrick raised any concerns, there is documentary evidence that the union recovered tens of thousands of dollars of underpayments from the Alex group of companies. Mr Fitzpatrick's story does not stand up.
But is Brian Parker's relationship with Alex appropriate?
He has no inappropriate relationship with Alex. Alex is an employer in the industry. Mr Fitzpatrick has not brought one allegation or piece of evidence of an inappropriate relationship, and there has been none here today.
So you're comfortable with that relationship?
Well, I'll tell you what I do. I deal with the facts, and if people make allegations, they need to back them up. Now, it's all right to get up in a Royal Commission with a rails run from a counsel assisting who frankly treats witnesses very differently depending on what he wants to get on the public record, and make unsubstantiated allegations. If Mr Fitzpatrick or anyone else has evidence of inappropriate relationships between any of our officials and any employer, let them put it, but let's have facts, not second-hand hearsay and smears.
Are you saying
and that's all we got today.
Are you saying that Jeremy Stoljar is conducting this inquiry in a biased fashion?
I'm saying that it appears to me that we've got two lots of witnesses in this inquiry. We've got those that go business class and those that go economy class.
The Slevin report, though, did raise concerns about the keeping of records.
Yes.
So that was deficient. So what about that?
Well, the union will have to address that. The Slevin report is a straight down the line report. It raises those concerns. It also raises the fact that we need to have an improved whistleblower policy. No one is saying that the union is perfect. No one is saying that the union cannot do things better. But where we get a bit annoyed is when you're accused of going hard on a company that owed $600,000 to workers, in other words, Liscon, and going soft on a company that owed $900,000 to workers. And in both cases, we did our job diligently and recovered those entitlements.
You feel the Royal Commission is not being even-handed?
Oh, well, the Royal Commission is a witch hunt set up by the Abbott government to damage and disparage unions, and that is the role it is conducting in political life today. This is a political exercise. Blind Freddie knows it, you all know it, and we know it.
Just going back to the death threat that was made against Brian Fitzpatrick, Jeremy Stoljar said that that 000 call that we heard today was a powerful piece of corroborating evidence. Do you share that view?
Well, the 000 call was made by the union, and the union, if our officers receive a threat like that, will always contact the police and let them know. But I think you should remember who withdrew the complaint when the police arrived. Mr. Fitzpatrick withdrew it because he understood that the person he thought had made the call wasn't the person who'd made the call. Now, there's no mystery here. The only mystery is that we've got two people with a different course of events. If this had been a secretive call by Mr. Greenfield, do you think he would have used his own mobile phone? Let's use a bit of common sense here and get away with the sort of, histrionics that we've seen from counsel assisting. Let's use a bit of common sense.
Dave Noonan, what about the allegation raised by Owen O'Neill today that he was alleging that his competitors in the construction industry were paying the union in order to force his company out of work?
He's a liar. He is a liar. He has no evidence of that. He wasn't able to put any first-hand evidence on that at all. Our union is very clear. We don't accept people in our organisation who take bribes. If they were to do that, we'd hunt them out of the organisation and give them to the police. But O'Neill has got in there this morning. Again, he has had a rails run from counsel assisting, and he has told a pack of lies.
Will you be seeking... Are you appearing before the Commission?
I'm sorry?
Are you going to be appearing before the Commission?
Well, that's in the hands of counsel assisting, but whether it's in there or out here, I'll call it as I see it. And if people tell lies in the Commission about our organisation, I'll call them as liars outside the organisation. And today I call Owen O'Neill as a liar.
Do you hope to be called by the Commission?
It's up to the Commission.
But do you hope to be? Do you hope to have a chance to speak before the Commission?
If I'm called by the Commission, I will appear before the Commission, absolutely no doubt about it.
Just back to the Alex companies.
Yes.
Where there is a preferential is the wrong word, but there is a relationship in EBA terms between the union and the Alex companies. Where there was money, workers' entitlements that did need to be recovered from those companies, why is that a company that the union would want to have a beneficial relationship with? Why is that a good company to be associated with?
Well, what EBAs are, you need to understand what EBAs are. EBAs are a document which sets out a legal standard of wages and conditions which have to be paid to workers. The union does not get to choose who gets registered by ASIC to conduct business in the building and construction industry. There is no fit and proper person test for employers. Perhaps this commission might like to suggest one, but if they did, their key witnesses both here and Melbourne would be struggling to pass it, I tell you now. Now, the situation is this. The union has a responsibility to ensure that workers have minimum wages and conditions which are legally enforceable. Do you suggest that because we may not like the cut of an employer's jib, that we should say to our members, we're not going to negotiate an agreement with your employer? Is that what you're putting?
No, I'm saying we had evidence that Mr. Alex had a very close relationship with union officials. One statement involved barrow loads of hampers of alcohol at the Christmas party. Is that the sort of relationship?
No,
that is
well, I
a
mean,
close one for
I
the
didn't
union
hear,
to-
but that evidence was led today. I must have been out of the room
It
when
was
that
in the
evidence was
statement.
led today. Sorry?
It was in the statement.
Well, unfortunately, we don't get to see the statements until they're tendered. That was in Fitzpatrick's statement, was it? Yeah, well, you know, I'm not going to comment on evidence that I haven't
He gave
seen.
evidence that Mr. Alex turned up at a Christmas party with a wheelbarrow filled with alcohol.
Yeah, well, look, I don't know anything about that. All I would say is that Mr. Fitzpatrick's evidence, to my sure and certain knowledge, should be treated with the greatest of scepticism.
And you're entirely comfortable with the status of the relationship between the union and Mr. Alex?
I don't give any employer character references. I don't give any employer character references, and I'm not going to give one to Mr. Alex. If we, in relation to any employer, find impropriety or corruption, we will deal with those officials. But what we have to do here is bear in mind that we are dealing with smear, innuendo, and evidence which has never been tested by cross-examination. And we're not going to make decisions based on guilt by association, smear, innuendo, or evidence which has been untested and has in fact been led by counsel assisting in a particularly politically driven manner.
The union has counsel representing it, appearing in the commission. Why did you not seek to cross-examine today?
Well, you might be familiar with the practice notes that the commission has issued.
No, sorry, could you
You're not familiar with that?
No.
Okay. So it's a complicated legal position, but the Commission has made a decision in relation to these hearings that no cross-examination will be permitted of witnesses at the time that evidence is led, and that before any cross-examination of witnesses will be permitted, statements have to be tendered by people taking objection to the evidence. The Commission will then weigh those statements up and make a decision down the track as to whether cross-examination is permitted. Now, you know, that is legal in the context of a Royal Commission, but as we see today, it has an impact on the way that material is led by the Commission and reported in the media. I don't criticise the media for that, but you've had one side of the story because that is the way the Commission has determined to set the process up.
Do you expect to cross-examine in the future, should the opportunity
Oh,
arise?
well, we'll have a look at all of the evidence and we will make our decisions about what evidence we challenge and which we do not.